a lot of the times when people communicate, they want to sound smart or whatever it may be. And so they have to make it super complicated in order to be like, you got to be attracted to me because I know. And I think a lot of the times, a lot of leaders or influencers or these kind of marketing guru kind of folks, they like things being complicated because it makes them.
Hello, gang. Once again, welcome to the podcast, the Replace Your University podcast. I am your host, Michael Lush, and alongside me is a good friend of mine, Hector Gonzalez. Hector, welcome.
Very excited to be here, Michael.
Welcome to Tennessee, coming all the way from Austin, Texas. So let's talk about what you do. You mentioned that you grew up in the Bronx.
Yeah.
Okay. Was that from birth?
Technically, I was born in some hospital, I think in Rochester or whatever, but all my life was pretty much raised in the Bronx in A80 Boynton, Story Avenue. Was raised around Bloods, Crips, Latin Kings, all the gangs and all the shootouts and different things, the crackheads, the dope fiends and all that. And so that was very normal. Pretty much for the first 13 years of my life, that was all normal. That was all normal.
Wow.
So yeah, single parent household. My mom was raising me up. She had, I think, might have had multiple jobs. I remember once she had a lot of it was mostly like admin or organization for like real estate companies or whatever. And so she did that for, I think, one company I actually remember. I don't know why I remember their name, but Peter Cooper Stuyvesant Town. So that was when I'm like 8 to 10 years old, I'm pretty sure. So she worked with a lot of these real estate developers or real estate companies, single parent. Dad wasn't around. I didn't actually get to really start getting to know my dad until I was 21.
Wow.
So there's a whole crazy backstory behind that in terms of God and really kind of letting go of my own anger and resentment being in a single parent household with my dad not being around. But he was involved in a bunch of stuff. He was selling drugs, all of these things. And so my mom didn't want me to be around him. So we were in a battered women homeless shelter for about 8 months. And then they got her a spot to live in the hood at 80 Boynton. And then we lived there pretty much by the time I was 13, where she was able to finally afford to live out in a much more, not a nicer area, but an area that has a lot less crime. Yeah. And so,
So that was New York. What got you to Texas?
So what got me to Texas? So after New York, there's a little bit of some backstory here. So at 18 years old, I felt a call to do missions. So I did a bunch of missions work, speaking around the world, sharing the good news of our Lord and all of that stuff. And I moved to Kansas City for about 2.5 years to do like a ministry school out there. Was there for 2.5 years. I had a buddy of mine who pretty much was like, hey, listen, we want to do some missions work in India. We'll go live in Varanasi, which is like the Hindu capital of the world, and do like church planting along the Ganges River. I was intending to move there. And we just needed to stay in California for about a year. That team ended up shutting down, ended up staying in California, where I met my amazing wife, Angela, at a church called H-Rock Church can't remember the year that I met her. I think it was like 2015 or 16. We got married in 2021, in November 14th. And we felt prior to the pandemic, because everything happened in February of 2020, March of 2020. We felt prior to around 2018, 2019, we had this kind of like inkling on Austin. And I remember I kept on hearing this like phrase prior to Elon.
Probably had a push too from the Communist Republic of California.
Yeah. It's a little bit of push and pull, like a little bit of a combination of the two. But so we ended up just kind of having these like senses around Austin and Texas and I visited there probably, no joke, the year 2018, 19. I was an executive in a company where I had equity share in the business, and I was pretty much going to Austin about every other month. So 6 times that year, I think 2018, 2019. I just fell in love with it. I fell in love with the people. I fell in love with the environment. I fell in love with just Texas in general. And for me, it resonated a lot more with my values. I was born and raised in New York, but in terms of my mindset, it resonated, so much more with how a lot of folks in Texas, a lot of the locals there, how they think when it comes to guns or the policies, the politics. just values on faith and God and everything. So for me, it just made sense. So right around 2020, when did we move? 2020, actually we got married 2020, the end of 2020, 2021 we moved, February 14th. We moved to Texas, and we've been living there ever since.
Nice.
So, yeah.
Well, we need to tell folks what it is that you do, because what you do is pretty amazing. You help companies. Well, I don't want to explain it and ruin it. So you explain what it is you do.
So, I mean, pretty much really keeping it simple, we help companies. A lot of them typically are information-based. So they have an expertise. They're experts on fitness. They're experts on real estate. They're education-based businesses. And typically we're adding on and creating complementary subscription models to maximize their monthly reoccurring. We got into this in 2020 when the pandemic happened. Prior to when I was an executive in this company, prior to going on my own in 2019, we on the side, based on the business I was doing in that company, a lot of people wanted help. So I got a lot of freelance work, different things. But during that time, about 2 years before the pandemic, we were helping different business owners who they were, business coaches to photographers, or they were this or whatever it is. And they wanted these low end $20, $50, $100, $200 a month subscriptions instead of the typical like high end, $5, $10, $15, $20, $50,000 package.
Right.
So we were doing that for a couple of years prior to the pandemic. The pandemic broke out. We realized everyone was super scared, especially at the beginning. A little bit more loose now with money. Obviously, people are spending versus, at the very first maybe year, give or take, of the pandemic. But we realized a lot of companies, I had a lot of friends who their businesses went from, we saw some of my closest friends or clients prior to us working with them, they went from like 150, 200 grand to all of a sudden 80 grand. And obviously if you have payroll, that is like, well, you're still making 80 grand a month. It's like, well, payroll is 100 grand a month. So there's a little bit of some, nervousness there. And we saw that, and we realized before then I was just doing freelance copywriting right around beginning of 2020. And I was just like, we're going full speed to subscription. So instead of the initial, which I think how we connected, just typically doing freelance copywriting and email marketing at that time, we branched off and we really doubled down. We said, we're not doing any email, which was honestly really scary because for me, everyone knew me at that time as the copy goat. That was my email, Hector@thecopygoat.com.
That's how I was attracted to you.
Correct. Yeah. So it was all copywriting and messaging and writing, and people, even today they still, in many ways will come to us for that. But it was a little nerve-wracking, obviously, cutting that off and saying, this is all that we're doing, but it ended up really well. And we've helped, different coaches and experts in different fields, add a subscription and add another 50, 100 grand a month.
So are these companies that also have high ticket and
typically, yes. Yeah. So typically most of the business, we've had a few that their main business is either their subscription, but that's very few. Yeah. That's, the SaaS companies that their whole business is subscription, or other businesses that have been coming to us that are only subscription. But most of our clients, I would say probably about 98%, they usually have a $5, $10, $15, $20,000 offer already. They have that, and they've been established as a business for, give or take on the short end, 18 months, and on the higher end years, 5, 10, 15 years. And so they're doing around 1, 2, 3, 5, 10 million a month, or annually. And from there, they come to us saying, hey, we've either seen a drop in sales. So there's that side, or they're when they're that $10 million a year company, they start thinking about exit strategy.
Yes.
So because I think everybody, you're very familiar, obviously, in the internet marketing camps. A lot of the young bucks, quite honestly, like me, I'm only 29 years old, is they don't really plan exit strategy. They're not really thinking about. They're not thinking about retirement. They're not thinking about any of that. It's just grind, and buy the Lambos or whatever, and cool getting Lambos. But at the end of the day, there's no actual plan to, okay, how am I going to go and get out of being entrepreneur to being investor, and actually being present with my family, all of that stuff. And so, this came a little bit later down the line, but we realized like, wow, actually adding another 50, 100, 200 grand a month, whatever it is in subscription, if someone their churn rates are good, and
what is a good churn rate, by the way?
Typically it varies on industry, but we're usually shooting, our average client gets at around like, give or take around 5%, 10%.
Okay.
Anything more than that, anything beyond 10%, I'm not really happy with.
Yeah.
In high ticket, it's a little bit different. So in high ticket churn rate, a good like retention is give or take 50 to 75% that you're actually doing rate. I think Alex Jarfin even, when I was an executive in a company, we did his program, and he references if you're retaining 50% of your clients at, and it's a $10,000 program, 20,000, you're doing great. So on that industry, it's a little bit more on churn, but in subscriptions, we're shooting for our clients to do no more than around 5%, 7%. Yeah, which is really good.
Yes.
We have a client right now who, in about 6 months, it's crazy because he had a Stripe account.
Mm-hmm.
Stripe has this interesting thing where they can randomly just axe your account.
Yeah.
And you lose all of you. I don't know if you've ever experienced that before, but I hope that no one ever experiences that. But that happened. So we have
a backup to a backup.
Oh yeah, you got to have a backup to a backup. So he was at around, we got him to around 20 grand in like 2-3 months in MRR, and it was growing. And then it sliced down to like 7K a month because the Stripe just was like, bye. So that was the learning lesson for us. And we're like, okay, we got backup accounts and different things like that. We scaled it from that time from 7K a month to around, he's doing around 66 grand a month in about 4 months, 5 months from that moment where he dipped down. And his attrition, or his drop-off rate, is somewhere around 2%.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous at a $375 a month product.
Yeah, before I met you, we had no monthly reoccurring revenue stream. We were only high ticket, and some would even argue that wasn't a high ticket back then. Now we would be considered high ticket where our price range is, but we've also now peppered in some other verticals that are monthly subscriptions.
Yeah.
And it's not where we want to be by any stretch of imagination, but you brought up an interesting point because a lot of, especially young entrepreneurs, you're right, they're going after that big ticket item. Let's get, a couple million in the bank account and go splurge and spend it all. And they don't have anything coming in consistently. But the biggest point is they're not building something that is extremely valuable on the exit. And every business should be built for an exit.
Yeah.
The choice,
even if you don't exit.
Even if you don't exit, the choice is totally up to you. If you want to stay in that business for the reoccurring revenue or the capital that it brings in, that's fine. But every business should have structure to it that is attractive for an exit.
Absolutely.
And the monthly reoccurring revenue model gets us exponentially higher multiplier than just high ticket.
Absolutely.
And, I look, we did an evaluation when I had a previous business partner that wanted to exit the company, and we didn't have any reoccurring revenue model. And so he thought in his mind, the company's valued at this because
we're making X, Y, Z
amount. Was this, right?
Yeah.
He was also that type of individual that whatever the gross of the company was doing is what he was claiming to everybody else that he was doing. It's like, I think most people understand that in business, and back then, the company was probably doing $3 or $4 million a year, massive overhead. We were one of those crackheads that was living and dying off of Facebook and YouTube ads, right? So that's 50% of your budget right there, let alone when you got to pay
30% extra in payroll. So you're taking home maybe, 30 grand, but then you split that up between 2-3 people.
Yeah, and I don't want to make it sound like we were living off of peanuts. I mean, we were doing a couple 6 figures a year, but not millions in personal income a year. But then we got a valuation on the company and it came back and I could just see the look on his face. It's like pure disappointment. Because we're all based off of EBITDA and you've got gross revenue and nothing consistent coming in that a company that would be looking to acquire us would say, we can bank on this coming in every single month. So therefore the multiplier, there was no multiplier. Actually, the value was less than what our yearly gross was. Because we were based on EBITDA, right? Now we're a completely different company with obviously multiple verticals, and we have high ticket. We also have monthly subscription, because one of your guidance, but also two, because of Ryan Nadell, who came on and was like, hey, you guys need to have some kind of monthly reoccurring revenue coming in. And our goal is to have enough monthly reoccurring revenue to exceed what the operating budget is. And in that way, anything high ticket is just a cherry on top.
Pretty much. That's exactly. For me, I think I think I started thinking this way. I personally love reading a lot. Like I love reading. I typically try to get around two to 4 books, give or take a month. And I love reading about certain individuals in history. You know, you've got kings and different monarchs who a lot of the times they're thinking 100, 200, 300 years. And they're thinking succession. They're thinking who is going to succeed after me when I'm dead and gone.
Legacy.
And really, you know, we always say that a lot of the times, and even in the internet marketing space, you always hear, you know, this context of, you know, being wealthy and having a legacy. But I think when you actually break that down, like, okay, what are the habits and what are the things that need to be put in place in order to actually do that? And a lot of the times, you know, you see it a lot in the internet marketing space. It's legacy maybe communicated, you know, maybe to attract from a marketing perspective. But when you actually look into it and how a lot of these marketers are positioning their own businesses and how they teach their own clients, there's no legacy at all. If God forbid the person needs to stay away for the business for 3 months because mom got cancer, can you do it?
Yeah.
Well, you know, and even if you weren't to exit, at the end of the day, when you think about succession, you have to realize there's going to be a point, there's going to be a moment of reckoning in your life. It may be now, it may be further along the line, but there's going to come a moment of reckoning for everyone's life where eventually you have to step down. That's just the reality. At the end of the day, every king, any leader, any political leader, any government official, every high-level business owner, there's going to come a point where they're not the one.
Term limits.
100%. And so you have to think, how can I position and structure my business to a way that is going to allow that? And for me, you know, MRR is a legacy move. That's really what it is. Because like you said, if you have payroll covered at the very least, and you have extra profit, everything is all, at that point, it's just built on top.
Right.
If you have marketing spend covered, you have your employees covered, you have your contractors covered, you have all these things, insurance covered, you have everything covered because of your subscription. It's like, dude, you genuinely can just be like, hey, wife, we're going to just go and travel the world for a year. And, or, you know, I'm going to get a CEO to manage this because I want to start another business. And we all know, like everybody knows that when there's that transition, there's going to be a phase of ups and downs and peaks and valleys with that transition that at least if you have payroll covered, you're not stressed out.
That's also something that will diminish your multiplier too. Is they start to see these peaks and valleys. Is there seasonality to your business, and that will diminish your multiplier.
And look at your business like crypto.
Yeah.
Versus, you know, something that's very steady, very stable, and they're gonna, you know, these investors are gonna look at you and they're gonna say, you know, you're not steady at all. One moment you're this, the next moment you're this, and it's like, yeah, your business is doing $2 million a year, but we'll pay you $500,000.
Yeah. So some of these young cats are after that lifestyle business, where it's like, let's get the cash, let's have the fancy cars, the fancy houses, and all that. And I see it as a sign of immaturity, because really the flex move is how can we get as much revenue with as least human capital as possible, right? At the biggest multiplier as possible. And, you know, that's one of the things that we're conscious about doing in this company is creating a SaaS model as well, because that you know, SaaS models can go for 10 to 12
huge
multiplier.
Huge.
Right.
I mean, I think what is it that most billionaires are made out of either finance, real estate, or tech, typically.
Yeah. And the biggest flex, in my opinion, is having a company that, puts food on the table and provides impact for the people that they're serving. If you serve at a high level, you should get paid at a high level. But really having that sacrifice along the way and saying, all right, I'm reinvesting back in the business because we need to acquire or merge with this company, or we need to have a SaaS model. And the flex should be, okay, now we're taking a $30 million a year business and exiting at $300 million.
Yeah.
And that doesn't happen overnight. And I think, again, that goes back to the sign of immaturity is we're looking for that get rich quick thing. And it's really hard because, you know, you take a business like us, if we contemplated exiting, we would have to start books now, and you would have to rearrange a couple things, put people in place, get your SOPs in place, a company manual in place. You're really looking at maybe at the earliest 2.5 years before you can actually exit.
Yeah, that's true.
Because if a company's interested in you They are going to look at, and that's a whole strategy.
Look at your P&Ls for the next 24 months.
And you need to know that game. That's a whole different game that you need to know. You need to have somebody on your side, on your team that understands purchases, acquisitions, exits, and because they're going to look at every negative thing, just like if you're buying real estate, right? Well, that roof's leaking. I don't think this is worth one.
Well, we found out a criminal thing happened, a couple of blocks away. So that means the environment might, all that. They look at all that stuff.
Yeah. And so I know that we teach in our program a lot about real estate investing. And so because inside of Replace University, we have Replace Your Employer that is almost wholly real estate investing of all different kinds. They assume because I'm the CEO that I'm a big real estate investor. And they're shocked to realize that I'm not. And they're like, well, what do you do? I look at businesses no different than real estate.
Yeah.
In real estate, where's your money made? On the buy side.
Yeah.
Everybody thinks it's on the sell side. No, that's not where you make your money. That's where you realize the good decisions is on the sell side. Where you make your money is the good decisions on the buy side. And it's no different in business. You find a business for $250,000 that might be producing $10,000 a month. We did this last year with a publishing company, producing $10,000 a month. Now we increase the subscribers, Google AdSense, and now you monetize it different ways because you now have an audience, and then exit for $3 million, right?
Yeah.
That's no different than real estate.
100%.
The problem that people have with it, and they're so scared to even get into what some would call flipping businesses, is
acquisition side.
We've talked about it so many times, anything financial, like when we talk about day trading, Fibonacci reports, candlesticks, and all this. People talk in terminology that really confuses people because it doesn't really edify the person they're talking to. It edifies them.
Yep.
And it builds them up like, I'm a genius. I know this terminology. And when they talk, they're like, you don't even know what I'm talking about.
Absolutely.
It's really simple stuff. Like, we've got Jeremy, who's on the team as a day trader, absolutely crushing it. He's like, dude, honestly, it's third grade math.
Yeah.
He's like, anybody can do this.
Yeah.
He said, I could take a teacher at a high school or an elementary school. I could take a mechanic. I could take a plumber. If you understand basic third grade math and get laser focused, then you can make money day trading. Same thing with exiting businesses, purchasing and exiting businesses. It's no different than real estate.
Absolutely.
Ignore all the weird noise and big words.
Complicated. Like hyper. Yeah. People, a lot of the times when people communicate, they want to communicate, they want to sound smart or whatever it may be. And so they have to make it super complicated in order to be like, you got to be attracted to me because I know. And I think a lot of the times a lot of either leaders or influencers or these kind of marketing guru kind of folks, they like things being complicated because it makes them feel that person needs them. Because I think, I don't know if it's a self-esteem issue or whatever it is, or feeling
I
ego.
think it's an insecurity.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%.
I also find it funny. Another thing that's an insecurity is a lot of these gurus on Facebook or YouTube flashing their cars or their watches. And that's a massive insecurity.
I personally can't stand that, honestly.
No,
I can't.
It's obnoxious.
It's so obnoxious. It's so typical. There's no class to it. For me, when the more you get around folks who are so much further ahead than you. I've got a good buddy of mine who, I've got a couple of good buddies of mine that will do 9 figures this year, and they're so much further ahead. The more you realize, the more someone thinks bigger, the more private they get. They don't get super loud. They get they don't have to.
Right.
They don't have to. They're very private, and they don't need to prove necessarily anything. And I feel like a lot of the guys who they need to show that they got 2 Lambos or whatever it is, and I think a lot of the times that's maybe like a phase. Oftentimes that some guys maybe they feel like they need to go through that. I personally don't feel like I need to do any of that at all, but some of these guys, they feel the need to do it, and then they eventually, some of them, they get out of it, some of them they don't. They just stay that way for years, and you're like, man, you still haven't learned the lesson.
Yeah, it's good that you know that at your age, because at your age, I was the opposite. I was, well, maybe not that age. I was pretty close to going broke at your age. So I was being humbled. But prior to that, I won't say thrusted. I chose to go into an industry that right away, multiple 6 figures.
Yeah.
Young kid, cocky, and I was nice suits, 3 pieces. It was weird because every time we came to the office, and it was funny because we never saw a client.
Yeah. Yeah.
But we would go to this office where it had this massive call center, right? And it was a contest of who had the nicest suit on. And then you go out to the parking lot, it was, okay, it's a contest of who has the nicest cars. And that was no different. Escalades, Denali's, four-wheelers, motorcycles, big house.
100%.
But just stupid with money. It just assumed that this money was going to constantly come in.
100%.
And you're 100% right. It's the ones that you don't see coming. Like we've got a buddy.
Silent but deadly ones.
Oh yeah, he's got $200 million. And sometimes he don't even wear shoes. I'm not. You think I'm kidding? No, like the first thing he'll come in and do a presentation or whatnot, and then you look down like, where the hell are your shoes at? He's not even wearing shoes. Doesn't shave. So I went through that phase where I was that person, and I think people don't change until they get to the point where they can't stand their own stench.
Absolutely.
Right? And that was me. I was like, I'm a fraud.
Yeah.
And on top of that, I exposed myself of how bad I was with money because I had plenty of it coming in that if I was wise with it and an actual
investor,
investor,
could have turned that into God knows how much.
Yeah. I went through the meltdown, and had I been prepared for the meltdown, dude, I would have tripled, quadrupled my net worth during the meltdown. But instead, I made myself a victim of the meltdown because I was not a good steward of my money. You know, Jesus talks about, or not Jesus, I think it was in John, he talks about the parables of the talents, right?
Yes.
Where, you know, he gave one man more than he gave another man.
Correct.
And then the one man hid it.
Yep.
Because
he put it in because he thought of how the king would react. And then the king goes.
He was scared to lose it, right?
Yep.
And what did Jesus call him? The man that he gave the least resources to and hid it was a fool. Mm-hmm. But the man who multiplied it was the one that was worthy. Yeah.
Which I find actually really interesting in that particular passage.
Is that in John, by the way?
I believe there's a couple. I think in Matthew. It's in Matthew.
Theologian.
Yeah, it's in Matthew, and I think it might be in John. But one interesting kind of fine detail of that passage, it's the specific phrase that the servant who was the king took away the talent and gave it to the one that I think that multiplied it to 10x'd it, was he specifically said, I was afraid of the harsh man that you are. That's kind of relatively the phrase. And it's really interesting because I think this is like a random side tangent in terms of how we view God oftentimes is how we manage money. Mm-hmm. You know, if we view God in a particular way, in either a harsh way or whatever it may be, we constrain, we hold on to, or whatever it is versus, you know, I'm very interested in the fact that how our views of God shape our philosophy and then our actions, and then it impacts our lives. So it's just really interesting to see that dynamic. But yeah.
So now, so it's not just him, but you know, you've got, I don't want to say his name because he probably doesn't want people to know he's got $200 million, which is kind of hard to hide. Dude owns an island in the British Virgin Islands. You probably know who I'm
talking about. Look like a homeless guy or something like that.
Yeah, I'm not kidding you, dude. You know, you think you're hairy. This dude's hairy. He can grow a beard in one day.
Dude, it's so annoying. I'm like, every single time I shave, this thing is back.
Dude. Look at me.
I've learned.
I'm getting sunburned like that.
I've just learned to say, you know what? This is good because I have high testosterone. This is good.
Yeah. I didn't come into my true calling and real personal growth until I got comfortable in my own skin and said, this is me. Yeah. Take it for what it's worth. Flaws, everything involved. And it actually, if you want to know how to really attract clients, just be yourself.
100%.
Don't pretend
100%.
to be somebody you're not, because you can't keep that
100%.
up. You couldn't. That was me. I couldn't keep it up.
No.
And I remember when I went broke, at the beginning, it was like super embarrassing because a year before that, everybody's like, dude, Lush has got this huge house. He's got these fancy cars. I mean, he's just killing it. And then it's like, you're being exposed for the fool that you were, right? And it's embarrassing.
Absolutely.
And I finally just said, you know what? It is what it is. I'm going to embrace it. And I was open about being broke. I was like, man, hey, did you watch this on TV the other night? No, we don't have TV. Can't afford TV. Can't afford internet.
Well, when you made that switch in your mind, was there a conversation you had, a moment that kind of shifted your perspective? Because I was actually just listening.
I wish I could pinpoint the actual moment. I mean, I could definitely tell you the season. It was 2008. Okay. Right? So on my birthday in 2007, the company filed bankruptcy.
Okay.
That I was, no, I wasn't an executive. I actually stepped down from being an executive, but I was pretty fresh off of the heels of being an executive with that company. And they filed bankruptcy. It was a subprime mortgage company.
Okay.
Everybody was killing it, but it was like, dude, they just turned the lights off because that's how quick it happened. And that's what's about to happen. I was on a Zoom call. Shout out to Ryan Garland, billionaire real estate developer. So I was on a Zoom call with him, and he's talking about the next 18 to 24 months. He's like, dude, it's happening. It's going to happen a little bit different than the way that it did. That one was a mortgage meltdown because if you fogged up a mirror, I mean, you probably saw the movie The Big Short, where strippers are getting 3 homes, right?
Yeah.
That scene where she's like, I got 3 homes. I got one over here, one over there. Yeah. It's like, how did you qualify? It's like, I didn't have to qualify. I just told them I made X amount of money. That was less than 1% of our portfolio, but it didn't matter. That whole back end market, securities market totally dried up. So that paper was gone. So it was literally overnight. I remember my office, July of 2007, we were probably doing 450, 460 units.
Yeah.
Fast forward to September, we're talking 2 months, 60, 70 units. Whoa. Yeah. That quick.
Holy cow.
That quick. And scrambling to try to figure out how to do government paper. And nobody really wanted to entertain that because if you do government paper, it takes like 30 days to close. You got to get the FHA to approve it.
I want to cry right now.
Guidelines. No, dude, I could talk to somebody. Let's say it's the end of the month, right? The last week of the month. And for those that were in this industry will totally resonate with this. It could be a Monday, the last week of the month. Like, cool, man, let me hammer the phone because I've got a pretty good amount closed. But if I can get 3 or 4 more closed, man, my month is going to be killer. And I could close them by Friday. Wow. Yeah, that's how quick it was underwriting process. Now, that doesn't exist, right?
No way.
And so we try to transition where it's like, okay, all these loan officers, instead of these set of guidelines, we now have these set of guidelines. And oh, by the way, it's going to take 30 days to close. That was a mind trip. And they're like, no, that ain't going to work. So they filed bankruptcy. So back to the original point, I don't remember the actual moment. I remember a season of my life. That was December 17th of 2007. The company filed bankruptcy, no severance, nothing. Get your stuff, pack out and leave. And it was just a trickle effect of, okay, no income coming in. I've got a big house.
Oh.
I didn't pay cash for my cars when I had it.
Wow.
Right? So I didn't pay cash for my cars. So starting to get cars repoed.
Are you and your wife married at this point still?
No, dating.
Okay. Got it, dating.
Cool. Yeah. So she
that's a faithful woman during that phase.
Yeah, but she didn't know me when I was rolling really good. She knew me right in the middle of all the crap.
Ooh.
Yeah, so that's why I knew I got a good one.
Yeah. That's a good one.
Smoking hot, and I'm like, I must be a really good salesman, man. Yeah. So, but she knew me at my worst. Actually, we had to move in with my parents. They had an empty house on the farm, and it was probably 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning.
Well,
Repo guy came to get my truck.
That's incredible.
Yeah,
that's incredible.
Yeah, and she's watching. It's like just seeing this man get torn down. And so again, not a specific moment, but I remember the season of just being like, this isn't me. And, I'm now exposed for the fraud that I really was, talking to people about money and mortgages, and you should do this and that. And I wasn't doing it. I just got to a point where I couldn't stand my own stench.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people need to get to that point, or I don't think they need to. It can be a blessing when they do get to that point where it's like, okay, I need to go back to basics and being me. That was the biggest moment of personal growth. We didn't have TV. We didn't have internet. I did have a cell phone, but it wasn't like they are today, right? You had a screen like that. You ain't watching jack on those. Actually, I don't even, we had an iPhone back then. But, so we didn't have anything for entertainment other than entertaining one another. Yeah. So it was board games. Monopoly was my favorite board game. And it still is to this day.
Monopoly so much.
So we played Monopoly, or we did the insanity workout. So we bought on DVD.
Dude, that guy, I feel like every time I did a workout of his, I feel like I was going to get a heart attack.
Yeah, no, yeah. And
he has the craziest workout.
True story. I had heart failure in college. And so, there was a couple times where
wow.
Yeah, it's in my book. But anyways, I had heart failure in college as a junior. It was from bacterial pneumonia.
Oh my
Yeah, it
God.
just got in my bloodstream, caused my heart to enlarge and collapse, and I woke up in intensive care.
Heck?
Oh yeah, real close. Actually, they called my parents, family, everybody flew in to basically say their goodbyes. My teammates were heading out to the NCAA tournament, and
Were you on life support during that time or something?
yeah,
Oh my God,
had all the
man.
tubes and stuff hooked to me.
And then randomly you just woke up or something like that? Like what?
No. So there was 2 hospitals where specialists that if I'd have went to any one of these 2 hospitals, they had a specialist there that was so new. Like now you hear the terms pneumococcal pneumonia or meningitis and all that. Now you've got doctors that specialize at all these different hospitals.
Yeah.
Back then, this was a pretty new thing where there was really only 2 hospitals that had specialists that could identify this, right? I remember I would pass out, flatline, and they kind of come to, and they're like, all right, do you have AIDS? I'm like, no, God, I hope not. And, I was a notorious drinker in college, but I didn't make a whole lot of time for women. So yeah, I was like, no, not that. So they're kind of going through the whole litany of things. But again, back to the point is there was 2 hospitals that I could have survived. One was CMC, Charlotte Medical Center, which is where I was sent to, or here in Nashville, Vanderbilt. Wow. Those are the only 2 hospitals, my hometown of Vanderbilt Hospital or CMC. So luckily that guy was on call and could help identify it and resuscitated me. And
wow, that's incredible.
But even after the resuscitation, I was conscious, and they were like, he's still not
going to function the same way for the rest of
No, my body wasn't adapting like it was. And eventually we got to make a decision to pull the plug because we can't just keep giving him what we're giving him. And I forget what it was to keep me alive.
Wow.
So like, his heart's just not responding. And, that had a pacemaker in and all that. So they're like, it's not going to work. And I'll tell you what kind of got me through it was my mom and dad made a conscious decision not to tell me. I remember they were out in the hallway with my brothers, uncles, aunts and stuff, and they come in and they're crying. So I knew something was bad.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking, worst case scenario, I can't play basketball again. That was my worst case scenario. Worst case scenario was he's dying and there's nothing we can do. So got precious moments, hang out with him, talk to him, whatever you can do. They never told me what was said in that hallway. And so all I thought about was I'm flat on a bed because I got catheters in my legs and my neck and all this was, all right, I'm tired of laying flat. I need to get to the point where I at least sit up in bed and I can watch TV and I can carry on a conversation. So 1 or 2 days led to where, okay, it got better. We can take this out. Now I'm this way. Like, all right, I'm tired of sitting in this freaking hospital bed where my brother's having to hold the pan for me to pee in, right? I mean, we're close, but that's a little too close.
We need some boundaries here.
Yeah. And I was like, I've got to get out of this hospital bed and at least walk the hallways. So eventually you got to the stand, and I'm walking the hallways. I was like, I have got to get out of this hospital. I'm tired of the good people. Thanks for keeping me alive, but these walls are closing in. I've got to get out.
So you just stacked.
And eventually they said, yeah, we can't really explain it, but yeah, he's good to go.
Wow.
Yeah. So then I go home and, get a call from doctors like he'll never play basketball again. I was like, that sucks. And it hit me hard, but I think they thought it would hit me harder than it really did.
Yeah.
I was just grateful to be alive. And I remember being at home at my mom and dad's house, really low energy. I'd spend probably 20 hours of the day laying on the couch or in bed. And then the other 4 hours, my mom would take me for a walk down the street. I'd probably get a half a block and then, because I had holes in my lungs too. So I was probably playing at 165, 175 pounds. And now I'm like 135 at 6'3".
Oh man.
Dude, I look like, I look like a really, really sick human being. I was just no muscle, just string and beans. So,
string bean.
Yeah. And so we would do these walks, but we wouldn't go far because one, I didn't have enough strength. And then because I had holes in my lungs, if I had a coughing fit, I'd eventually pass out. So we would just keep going a little bit further, a little bit further, a little bit further.
Wow.
And then eventually I said, I'm going to make it to the high school track. And so my high school is just a couple miles away, and I make it to the high school track and walk around the track. And then I got to the point where I'm running around the track, right?
Oh my God.
And then I'm like, all right, I need to go back and hang out with my buddies. And I'm still not back at school, which was a whole nother set of issues because I missed midterms. So I had to do it all over again. I had to do 26 hours the second semester to catch back up.
I can't.
Yeah. But I did it because I didn't have anything else to do. So I said, I got to get back in the gym. So I got to get back in the gym and work out. I got to get back to playing basketball and pickup. Even if I can't play at that level anymore, let me at least just do something I like doing. And the doctor's like, yeah, you know, we kind of did the tilt table test and all that. You know, be careful with the heart rate thing. He does have syncope, which is where your blood pressure and your heart rate go in the same direction. You can pass out easily. But yeah, he can do that. Just be careful what you're doing. Not really competitive. Like, okay. So level up again, right? Next thing you know, I have an appointment with a doctor and he's like, I think you're good to go. You go back to playing ball. And I did.
Wow.
Went back to playing college basketball.
Holy cow.
So it went from you're dead to you're never playing college ball again to I'll be damned, you're playing college ball again.
Wow. What's the phase of time? This is a year, 2 years?
No.
From
8 or 9 months.
8 or 9 months.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Man, that's incredible.
Yeah.
I had no idea, honestly.
Yeah, I couldn't drink alcohol during that period either.
Okay. That must have been a bummer during that time.
Dude, I saw. So this happened my junior year, which was I was the team captain. So my freshman and sophomore year was I was their star recruit, and like I was supposed to come in and be I chose to go D2 because D1 I didn't have many offers. Any offers I did was redshirt, right?
Yeah.
So it's like my mom and dad's like, one, you need to focus on education, but two, go somewhere where you're actually going to play.
Yeah.
Who cares what the name of the college is that you said that you went to and sat on the bench?
Yeah.
So went D2 and it was like, all right, I'm going to get a lot of playing time. And I did, but they recruited a JUCO All-American at the same position after they signed me. With not a dude, your coach, you get the best players on the team you possibly can. Unless you're Calipari, you know how to win.
Good. I'm a Kentucky fan, by the way.
So first 2 years, I'm getting a lot of playing time. I started a couple times when Glenn got hurt. I remember one game I came in and caught fire, hit like 5 threes in a row. It's like, that's right. I'm taking over. Dude comes in and does 11 threes. They're like Steph Curry type stuff.
Wow.
This dude was Steph Curry before Steph Curry.
Wow.
Yeah. Up until I saw Steph Curry, the best shooter I'd ever played with or saw was this guy. Just automatic.
Wow.
From any distance. But yeah, hit 11 threes in one game.
Man.
I don't know how many of them in a row, but a lot. And I was like, okay, well, I thought I was going to start, but I'm not. So he graduated. He was 2 years ahead of me. So he graduates. Now I'm the starter and team captain.
Okay.
We play one game and I do well. I broke the school record for most points in the least amount of time. And then it was another game that this happened. I thought I had the flu and it was this pneumococcal pneumonia that was in my bloodstream and eating holes in my heart and my lungs and played. I was like, Michael Jordan played with the flu. I'll play with the flu. Crazy thing is, even went to a clinic where they did chest x-rays and said, yeah, you got the flu, go home and tough it out. So I was like, my way of toughing it out is I got to break this fever. So let me go play this game and break this sweat.
Wow.
Yeah. And it was my teammate that found me passed out and I woke up in intensive care.
That's crazy, man.
Yeah.
That is crazy.
A lot of God moments in between too.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I feel like in moments like that, I mean, you probably have God knows how many stories in terms of.
Yeah, I do. But, I call it stacking wins. And when I say I call it, I don't know how to coin that phrase. Who knows where this information comes from? So if somebody's out there like, you call it this, Grant Cardone said,
James Clear from Atomic Habits says this.
Yeah. So I call it stacking wins.
For sure.
And that's what it was. It's like, I got to get this win. Then I got to get this win. And it was just yesterday on a coaching call where, we were actually talking about this. Like for instance, I'll use an example. David Goggins talks about how when he wakes up in the morning, he's not a runner. He's like, I don't like to run. But what does the guy do every day? Runs a lot.
A whole damn lot.
An outsider looking in would be like, this dude likes to run. But somebody asked him a very intelligent question. It was like, do you like to run? And he's like, no, actually I don't. He's like, every morning I stare at my shoes for 30 minutes until I tell the inner bitch to put the shoes on. And actually go.
I love David Goggins.
Yeah, he's awesome.
I will not listen to his audible around my kids.
But
You got to put the headphones on. Hey, there's a little,
but it's stacking wins. And, the first win is getting up at 4:30 in the morning.
Absolutely.
So the easiest way to get up at 4:30 in the morning is to actually get up.
Yeah.
Don't focus on the decision that comes after getting up at 4:30. Don't focus on the workout. Don't focus on what's laying for you at the desk, at the office or anything. Just don't hit the snooze.
100%.
Cut the alarm off and just get vertical.
Yep.
That's one decision.
Yep.
Am I going to stay horizontal or am I going to get vertical? Get vertical.
Yep.
Get vertical leads to, okay, now I'm standing up. Let me go to the restroom. Go to the restroom. By the time you're done at the restroom and you got your cup of coffee,
Yep.
it's like, I'm not going back to bed.
Yep.
I'm good to go now.
Yep.
So you just got to break through that barrier.
I did something really similar, and I never knew because this was when I was super young. I had a stuttering problem actually when I was a kid. A lot of it had to do with some of the abuse that I experienced when I was really young and a bunch of other stuff that happened. But when I was around 8 to 10 years old, every single time I got in front of people or I spoke or really even one-on-one, I would stutter a lot. And I remember right around when I think it was like 13 to 15, somewhere around there, I remember having these issues and it was like, okay, how can I overcome this? And I don't know if it was intuition, God, or whatever, or a combination. But I remember during that time, all I would do was think, okay, I'm a very fearful person. So what can I do right now? And a lot of the times, especially when I was 15 years old, I wanted to do a lot more speaking, like speaking at churches or whatever it is like that. But I was too dang scared to do it.
Right.
So one thing that I would do is like, okay, just when you're walking by someone, a stranger, just say, hey, or just not, even before that, just nod your head. Just do a head nod. Look in someone's eyes and say, and that's it. So I would just start there. And then it went from that to, okay, now that you feel comfortable with that, now go and do a nod and say, hey, what's up? That it went to, hey, when you go and you are doing groceries, you're getting your chicken breast or whatever it is, go and try to start up a conversation with the cashier. And it just became this ripple effect, almost like this domino effect, so to speak, that eventually it came to a point where I went from kid who was stuttering out of the Bronx, New York, who if I'd gotten in front of any amount of people, I'd be shitting in my pants, candidly, to getting to a point where at the age of 24, 25, ended up speaking in front of 30,000 people and had a ball. Yeah. Just, it felt totally fine.
Yeah.
A lot of that had to do with just
you mentioned
stacking it up.
shitting your pants. So I was deathly afraid of public speaking, which is weird because of what I do now. 90% of my day is content, right?
Yep. Coaching, educating, teaching, speaking.
Sometimes small groups, sometimes big groups. And it's funny because, one, rewind to diarrhea. Literally, they were like, hey, you're getting up to talk about this one topic. Don't take more than 2 minutes. We're talking about 2 minutes in front of maybe 100 people.
That's hard.
And well, yeah, but I don't even want to do 2 minutes. So I had diarrhea. So I'm back and forth to the restroom. And then he's like, hey, you're going to be up in a little bit. I was like, I can't go. I'm sick. I was like, okay, so you want us to tell somebody else? It was because I was scared. That's what gave me the diarrhea. I was deathly afraid. In a public setting, like a social setting, like 1 to 5 or whatnot, we're hanging out.
Yeah.
I'm a lively
for sure
extrovert, right?
For sure.
But you put me in like a professional setting where I've got to be on key and talk about something.
And in 2 minutes, and if it's professional too, I feel like that's harder. Like something that is 2 minutes, you have to be so concise, straightforward, simple, to the point. You got to be so organized in your thinking.
But some people are like, 2 minutes? Do anything for 2 minutes?
Yeah,
breath for 2 minutes.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
That was another thing.
Yeah.
You ever been so nervous that I'm forgetting to breathe?
Yeah.
And then it starts bubbling up in your voice and people know
your hands are sweating.
Now you're getting embarrassed because you're nervous.
Yeah.
So that was me probably 15, 20 years ago. All right. And then you fast forward, last year, I remember we were doing an event in Salt Lake City, Utah. It was for a bunch of real estate investors and I don't know, maybe 150 people in the crowd. And I'm getting up to talk on my topic And then I've got my buddy Nate over here saying, hey, you've got 10 minutes, not 10 minutes total. Like I'm already an hour into this thing, just ripping off. He's like, hey, 10 minutes. And I'm like, dude, you need to cut the timer off. That ain't happening. I'm just going to keep going. How did you go from this point to that point? Was repetition, putting yourself in uncomfortable situations.
Absolutely.
The obstacle is the way.
Absolutely.
Right? The hard way is the easy life.
Absolutely.
The easy way is the hard life.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Ooh, that was.
Come on now.
Yeah, that was a sound.
that Ryan Howard. Yeah, no, at the end of the day, each choice that you make right now, it's either an investment or a form of debt into your future.
Mm-hmm.
You're either taking out a transaction in your future, i.e. you're living the easy life now and you're in for a rough one down the line, versus if you delay that gratification and you make that investment, your future is going to be, I mean, you're going to have the easy life. It's kind of like, I think there was I don't know if Tom Bilyeu quoted this study. I think I've seen this, a couple of studies very, very similar mirror this, where they did a study with a bunch of kids and they had cookies. They had cookies in the middle of the room. And they told the kids, you can eat one right now, or you can wait in an hour and you'll get 2 or 3 within that hour. Well, what they ended up doing within this study, they ended up tracking these kids' lives. I think it's an epidemiology. They started tracking these kids' lives over like 30 years. And they realized the kids who deferred their desire, their desire for the cookie and waited, they actually later down the line in their lives, these kids growing up into adults were way more either intelligent, physically well off, more financially well off, so on and so forth, versus the kids who they went into more, the immediacy. It was everything about now, the kind of impulsive kind of life. All of a sudden, a lot of these individuals ended up, kind of having average or very mediocre physiques or health or financial.
Looks out of whack.
100%. And so, Ryan Holiday talks about an obstacle. That's his book, Obstacle is the Way. He talks all about that stuff. I love his book so much. I love his book.
I didn't even know that's where it came from.
Yeah.
I heard it from
he goes into like stoic philosophy.
Stoicism. Yeah, I think, Evan, you were the one telling me about that, right?
Yeah. He goes into a lot of like stoic philosophy, and he's got like the obstacle is the way, and what is it? Discipline is destiny is the most recent one that came out. That's one of my favorites, actually. But he talks a lot about, a lot of our ideas right now, especially the ones that you're seeing, within business owners that's more popularized with entrepreneurs and business owners, is that more stoic kind of philosophy of like, if you know how to delay and you know how to wait and think really long term, the more longer term that you can think and the more you can delay gratification, the more likely you are to actually be successful. I actually heard this from Taylor's podcast, I think today, his Good Life podcast. He was talking about it with a guy named Dr. Benjamin Hardy, where he was talking about how they had looked into individuals in terms of like their income brackets, billionaires and multimillionaires and so on and so forth. And they realized that the more their income was 9-figure to 8-figure to then, 7-figure millionaire to then 6-figure and then, average income, the more the individual lived either impulsively, their goals were really thinking of what is the value of my time now versus thinking in terms of 20, 30, 40, 50 years, which is really, how the Elon Musk of the world really think. And so,
man, talk about the scene around the corner.
Yeah.
The latest story that I think was either last week or the week before is, all right, yes, he builds Tesla electric vehicles, which was not a trend then, right?
Yeah.
It's like, I remember when I first saw him, I'm like, that's ugly as sin, man, especially that truck.
I do not like his cars. They're so, I can't, I understand that they're great products, but I can't.
But now, people are
everyone's about
buying them in droves,
Oh my God.
It wasn't just a car. What he now has is the network of the charging stations.
Yeah.
So these other manufacturers that are trying to compete against him, guess what they're having to partner
White
with
label
him on?
his stuff. Yeah.
The superchargers. Because they can't do it as well as him. So it's like, you got this product, but he's seeing around multiple corners.
Oh yeah.
Like, no, actually I have this huge network of charging stations that you don't have.
Yeah.
And you're going to have to eventually use. And I think it's Ford, Rivian, I think Toyota.
Really?
Yeah, they all have now.
They pretty much sign a deal with him where they can use their Tesla.
Charging stations.
Wow.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about being able to see around the corner, so that's really cool. All right, well, we got to wrap it up, but before we do, I want people to know how to look you up and get your services. Again, you help businesses, small to medium-sized businesses, really not just grow the monthly revenue, but you have to think of the long game too, of that exit strategy, that this as a massive amounts of value.
Absolutely.
You know, let's say you're a business that's 10 million a year and you don't have a recurring revenue stream, you might be able to sell for 12 or 15 million, right? Best case scenario, 30.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
However, you take this on, still doing the 10 million, but it's reoccurring.
Yep.
Now you're a $50 million company, right? So I don't know what you charge, but it ain't $50 million, right? So how can folks look you up to get your services?
So typically, Subscription Funnels Incorporated /community is going to be the best way. SubscriptionFunnelsInc.com. And then you can use the /community, and that gives us access that gives folks access to our free Facebook group. So we have a free Facebook group. They can get some content in there. They can get some free value in there. I go live in there, so on and so
There's going to be about 1 million Hector Gonzalez's, but they also need to follow you on Facebook.
Yeah.
Because, dude, he's blunt. Let me tell you, what was the one you just did today? I believe it was. What was it today? It was something about masculinity.
I think it was something along the lines of a feminine woman.
You don't beat around the bush.
No. Yeah, I love talking about.
Here it is. Prove me wrong. Feminine women love being told no by a man. A man with boundaries is perceived by her to be a man with mental and emotional strength, a man of decency and self-respect. Stop being a yes man. Nice guy antics only get you friend zoned.
Yep.
But you got tons of stuff like that. Hard truth. Being a strong and independent woman is code for I'm traumatized, entirely single, or on the verge of divorce. The idol of independence has robbed women of true joy and fulfillment.
Oh, it's so funny.
Yeah.
I've got my, individual little Twitter. So I do that because for me, it's always been about the message. I love talking about those types of things. I always say, honestly, if I didn't have a business and I was like an employee or whatever, I'd be still talking about those things, because especially seeing what's happening today with masculinity, different things of that nature. The more I've embraced, not being raised in a household with a man, I had to learn a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
I had to get around role models. I had to get around men who really were men and seek that out. That wasn't natural, i.e. fostered in the household. And the more I've realized, the more I step in and have stepped into that energy, the more my life has just gotten better. And for me, it just pisses me off, some of the things that I've seen with attacking masculinity, calling it toxic, calling responsibility is a feature of systemic racism or some garbage like that. I'm like, listen, I just found out I am okay. I'm Spanish, Puerto Rican, African, okay, sub-Saharan. I'm like, I am a minority. I literally was raised in probably some of the worst circumstances with a single parent household, dad selling drugs, all of these particular things. Got into multiple fights, God knows, when I was like 12, 13 years old, because I was so angry. And my life turned around. Not because I blamed the system or some garbage like that. Anyways, I could keep going on and on and on.
Did you know that? I kid you not, I found this.
This podcast could be another hour if we go down that route.
I learned that opening a door, I didn't learn, I was misinformed that opening a door for a woman was a sign of being chauvinistic
or patriarchal.
Oppressive.
Oh, yes. God.
I'm like, I'm just trying to freaking be nice. I'm a Southern gentleman. And now that's something that's
100%. For me, like my wife, I just do this. Whenever me and my wife, I walk on one side of the lane. That way, God forbid, someone were to come and there's a van full of a bunch of, and this is just how I think, because being raised in New York, this actually happens. It's like, I can beat the living daylights out of these guys and at the very least protect her so that she can get away. When we are literally in a restaurant, I literally have it. I tell her, I need you to sit right here. I'm going to sit right here so that I can see the doorway, because I don't want that any psychopath, whatever it is, I can immediately get you out of the way, protect you. And today that is literally seen as toxic. You're patriarchal. Oh, garbage.
And that's giving.
Yeah.
That's the way I view it. It's like that's giving. That is self-sacrificing for the greater good for somebody else, right? Is there a bigger sign of love than that, right?
No.
But yet you're right. It's being attacked by usually the left. Like
Typically. All the time.
I can't stand you can't even reason with that anymore.
No, you can't reason with it at all. And for me, I don't really know what's going to happen. I feel like, I feel like more and more I kind of want to go into this off-grid kind of thing because I just don't know necessarily.
I got a homestead.
Yeah. Yeah. You got what is it, 95 acres or something
90.
like that?
Yeah.
Yeah. You're going on Monday, by the way?
No, I was there last night.
Oh, okay. Cool. But I don't know what's necessarily going to happen, but I feel like the more the left keeps being just super irrational. And I have friends who think very differently than me, but the more there is not this, there's at the very least, the more we sacrifice rationality and the more we sacrifice, hey, we're going to have a conversation, at the very least be decent and listen and understand. The more we sacrifice that, the more, in my opinion, it's going to come to it's creating this polarized place really that we see either in politics and in everything. Now you're seeing it to where it's gotten so polarized because, I think both sides are battling out. I see most of it on the left, candidly, where they're they are literally, like you said, they don't care. It is literally just my position. It does not matter. Even if I disagree.
If you disagree,
yes,
you have offended me.
Yes, 100%. Even, what is it, Tulsi, you can't be a Tulsi Gabbard, who's technically a registered Democrat.
Yeah.
And yet, well, I think now she's independent, but was a registered Democrat. You can't be that person who actually thinks through things and is rational. Yeah, or Joe Rogan.
He's always voted Democrat.
100%. 100%. It's like, it doesn't matter. This is what we believe. If you don't agree, you're not a part of the tribe anymore.
Right.
And it's like, the more they kind of go down that, they're literally forcing the polarity. Today, where now you're seeing markets to where people are making their financial decisions based on what they believe now.
Social credit system.
Yes, correct. You're seeing people literally that their buying choices is now, that's why Sean Whalen blew up. Sean Whalen's had been in business for a while, but you saw him explode. Yes. And that is because you've seen the polarity where, because of how the left has honestly behaved, candidly, people are like, well, screw off. Target, this is what we're going to do. All of this stuff. If you don't have these values, then we're not going to buy from your business. And you're seeing that. And unfortunately, I wish it weren't the case, but they're kind of forcing it to be that way. So
yeah, I stopped going to Target to get my Bud Light.
Yeah, dude. Oh my God, this guy.
I just compounded it.
Well, cool. I appreciate it. Thanks for coming in, Hector. As always,
Let's go, brother. Thanks for having me.